give you some ideas about what to pay attention to in putting up a play.
Good morning, everyone, and today I'm going to briefly talk about some basic principles of theater production. And it's basically something most of you know, but there are some deeper parts that you ought to know for theater production. So the first, I'll start with director and the stage manager and prompter, and then the staging and the cast and crew and what their responsibilities are and what points there are to emphasize on. So the director, basically, it's the decision-making part. He has to decide if these costumes, these makeups, these staging, the properties are fitting to what the theme of the play is, and so he has to. Well, the director, he has to direct, but he never should demonstrate how an actor should act. The director should give absolute freedom to the actors to develop their own characters. And the stage manager, have any of you heard the name stage manager? Okay, so those who know that, you know that stage managers are they basically they monitor the backstage progress of the property crew, costumes, and makeup, and they serve as the director's assistant. So is the prompter. The prompter is what we call 场记, and 导助. So the prompter does document everything. So during every rehearsal, every meeting, designing meetings, the prompter is present in every rehearsals and in everything. Okay, now it's the staging part. So, so here we see a very full diagram of the theater. So when you see up top, this is what we call the upstage, and then this is the downstage. So the more down you go, the more close you are to the audience. And when we say upstage left, it's when we are facing the audience. This is our left, and this is our right. Okay, and the theater is basically divided into three parts: upstage, center stage, and downstage. Okay, and from the right to left, here's the extreme right, center left, and extreme left. So these are some short terms like DSR, DSL, for the prompter to document what the blocking, meaning that where the actor should go. So, for instance, the prompter might write that A goes from DSR to SL. So this is where the prompter writes A crosses DSR to SL. This is for some brief note-taking. So this is an even clearer diagram of the theater. So extreme right, center, center line, center left, extreme left. Okay, so when you're staging, for instance, property, your priority is always the audience. Okay, so no audience, no theater. No audience, no drama. So we have to consider every angle, the audience, the visibility of the audience. And we have to consider the background of the play, because the background meaning the staging, like you may use the projector to project a scene that you want to use. So it projects the time and space, and it saves a lot of time when you use projectors instead of real properties. And basically it sets the tone of the scene or the play. And it's prone to go through several modifications because you can't do everything right on the first try. It's impossible. So don't be discouraged when you encounter some obstacles, some setbacks when you're doing staging, because it's natural. And you never crowd the stage, because it really blocks the blocking. if this is the stage and it's crammed with loads of stuff, then the actors can't move in the most natural way. Okay, and basically this is where we start with the actors part, performing. Now, the first one is poise and focus. Poise means that you, for an actor, you have to stay in character at all times. You have to focus. So you have to stay calm, and you have to move with purpose. You can't giggle. You can't stomp your feet. You can't do anything that is not what your character is going to do. Now, characterization and acting. Well, you first have to understand the physical appearances of your character and how the character reacts to certain things and what kind of personality it has. So this is the very core of acting. You have to understand your characters. Eye contact. You have to make eye contact not just with the characters, but you have to sometimes look above the audience. So you're the audience, and my eyes should look at what is there, the 辅仁大学 title. So I don't look directly at you, because sometimes looking directly at the audience disillusions the audience, because there's what we call the illusion of theater. So for instance, if we come too close, the audience would start to examine the actors. So they will feel that, so this is what we look like with heavy makeup. So it kind of spoils the mood. So you don't look directly, but above the audience, and you never go too close or on the edge of the stage. Projection and diction. So this is a very common error that most people commit, because you have to speak loudly, because in a theater it's not just a small space like we are now. It's very huge. You have to enunciate. You have to speak clearly. All your syllables, your vowels should be clearly pronounced. So in order for the audience in the last row to hear you clearly. And pacing. Basically, the pace is what sort of the tempo and the rhythm of the play. So for actors, you have to detect the emotion, the pacing of this current scene you are in. So for instance, this is a very agitated character, and he's trying to rile everybody up. Okay, so he's very angry, but he can't. How is he supposed to talk? Is he supposed to talk, "Oh, I'm so angry," or should he yell out, "Oh, I'm so freaking angry"? So this is the pace. You have to focus on the pace. So for other actors to interact with your own character, the emotion is very crucial. You have to pick up all the cues. For instance, he's very mad and you're riled up, so you both have a very quick pace, quick tempo during the scene. And ensemble. This is important, very, very, very important, because a play is not just about your character. It's about the whole production, the crew, the cast, everyone. It doesn't involve just you. It involves a whole entity. Okay, so when you're working, you don't try to stand out. You try to blend in with the mood, with the pace, with the tempo. So this is what we call ensemble. You don't stand out, and you blend in with everyone else. Okay, you blend into the play like everyone else. And now blocking. So blocking is what we call simply called is well, just the movement of the actors. So for instance, downstage right to upstage left. This is what we call the blocking. So the movement of the actors on certain timing and purpose with purpose is what we call blocking. And when we're dealing with blocking, the most important part is that we do not show our profiles. So we cannot do this. Just allowing the audience to see our profile, our nose, but not the other side of our bodies. And we cannot and shall not turn our butts to our audience, because the audience need to see your eyes. They need to see your facial expressions, not how you clench your butt cheeks. Now, the crew. There are basically four different, well, I simplify it into four parties of crews. So the first one is property. They make and find props, and they change props in between scenes if necessary. And like all the other groups, precision is needed, because for property crews, you cannot be sloppy. You cannot miss a certain angle, because sometimes a certain angle messes up the whole blocking. So, for instance, if this table ought to be parallel, if someone alters it into a very awkward angle, it messes up the blocking. So property crews should be precise. Costumes and makeup. For costumes, you have to do your measurements. For further productions, you have to measure all the size of the actors, actresses, and you have to find costumes, or sometimes you have to buy them. And makeup crew, for the actors, you have to wear thick makeup just to make your facial expression pop out. And sometimes you need all the time you need efficiency, because in between scenes there are possibilities that we need to change our costumes fast, maybe 30 seconds or 20 seconds, so it needs extreme efficiency. In lighting, so lighting crew serves as the background. For instance, it may be morning. We can't use gloomy lights. We need to use something that is bright. So lighting serves as a certain background, and it should be well balanced. Well, mostly well balanced, unless you're having a monologue. Okay, if you're having a monologue, it's okay that the light is focusing on the current character, but most of the time it should be well balanced. For instance, this is a very well balanced lighting. Okay, so we see everything on stage. Nothing is cut off by shadows or darkness. And it must shed enough light on the performers. So we cannot allow that the face of performers to be blocked by shadows. For instance, my eyes will be covered if these lights weren't turned on. So this is not acceptable. And the color, you also should focus on the color, if it's suitable or does it fit the current scene, because it sets the tone of the play or the scene. And again, it needs precision, because most of the time we have light cues. For instance, a character enters and they ought to be light because he's switching on the light, but the lights don't come on. So it needs precision. And just like for those who have participated in productions, you understand the awkwardness when the scene is over but the lights are still on, and you're standing there like an idiot. And sound effects. Sound effects also serve the purpose of background, because it provides the audience with something they cannot see. For instance, a horse. You cannot bring a horse into the theater, so you use its neighing instead. And it also requires precision, because we have sound cues. For instance, if the character slams an invisible door, there ought to be a slam. But if there's not, it seems awkward, because sometimes theater is about imagination, but sometimes you have to provoke the imagination with certain things that the audience can relate. Okay? Now, and rehearsals. During rehearsals, punctuation is required. Everyone should be on time. And when everyone's arrived, we should do warm-ups. You should stretch. You should let your body stretch out and let your body feel present and not numb when you wake up, like you wake up every morning. And note-taking, because the director might discuss some certain how you should interpret this character. So you should always take notes, because in theater and in the production stage, you always have modifications. So you have to document everything so that you can know what where you're at, instead of just forgetting everything once you're at the next rehearsal. So you have to remember everything that you discussed and talked about and what progress you're at, okay? And rehearsals. Basically, the rehearsals there are 4 stages of rehearsal. The first is blocking. The director will just arrange how the characters should walk, should move, and then movement. Movement is a bit similar to blocking, but movement here represents how an actor should move. Instead of just walking, maybe he's limping, so he has a limp to every walk he takes. And then the exploratory. You explore possibilities for your character. For instance, emotions, hidden emotions, and certain habits or gestures it might have in the performance. The last stage of rehearsal, you demand precision and demand all your actors and actresses to memorize everything you've rehearsed for the past stages. And here's the conclusion. Theater production requires dedication, participation, communication, and modification. And the most important part is having fun. So once you have these 5 principles, you really cannot fail.
Heiko, you just mentioned, I heard about the principle of not, turning one's back to the audience or trying to face the audience as much as possible. But how do you do that when you move from backstage, downstage to upstage?
Well, so this is a very trick question, because we deal with many kinds of stages. For instance, you've been to Aaron's Theater. Have you been to Aaron's Theater? 白莲亭. Okay. So 白莲亭 has a very strange stage. There are 3, well, basically the audience surrounds you. You have the both sides surrounded by audiences. So during certain scenes, it is required that the character move from downstage to upstage. So sometimes you switch your sides carefully you just walk towards your left or your right. You don't directly turn your back on the audience. Instead, you walk like a circular movement, and you avoid just backing up from the audience. Okay? And for certain experimental theater or plays, they actually thrive on contacting and communicating with the audience. So sometimes a character might sit right beside you or come close to you or pull you upstage. This is all possible. So where I'm standing is a very traditional play, certain principles of traditional plays. You don't just turn your backs on the audience.
So basically, for a stage manager to know the blocking, he or she has to divide up an act into some scenes, right? But how precise should the blocking be? I mean, is it by every line or by every few lines, or usually how do you mark it, or do you just give general positions and then allow the actors and actresses to move?
Well, it differs from directors, because certain directors would ask you to go there on certain lines, certain timing, but other directors will ask you to go there at certain as you please, but you have to be there. So it has its pros and cons, because demanding directors have much more efficiency in directing his actors and actresses. But when you're a director that's not that demanding, and less it's more more democratic, then if the director is dealing with amateurs or rookies, then he might have a very hard time directing, because it takes a very long while for them to grasp how the blocking should be.